board. And in this session, I wanted to share some tips and insights that will be relevant and helpful for you and your firm, regardless of your starting position. And then also share some ways that that aligns so well with the FuseDoc system. So confirming everyone can see my screen. And buckle in, we're going to power through some really great content in just 20 minutes. So, first and foremost, when we think of a brand, we often think about our firm name or our firm logo. But many of you will know that the brands that we all know and love represent so much more than that. So, really, a brand is everything that encapsulates who you are and what you stand for in the market. And as John touched on, brands have become increasingly important at the moment with everything that's going on online. So, these brands on screen are obviously very well-known multinational brands that all have, million dollar, billion dollar budgets behind them. So many of what is taught by people online about branding is not relevant or transferable from, that B2B and professional services sense. But there are a few gems that are, and I'm going to be breaking these down for you now, and I'll just talk about one of my favorite brands. You're welcome to give a high five or a hands up if this maybe is one of your favorite brands too. But I'm going to play out what this means for you. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with champagne, this is Verve, and that obviously it has a very strong brand in the market for people that are connoisseurs of wine. Uh, Now, it's an expensive brand, right? You don't get this off the shelf for $20. Typically, this retails at the higher end of the champagne market, but not at the highest end. But it stands for something. It is only produced in that particular region, and unexpected benefit is little preservatives means minimal hangover. But what I want to talk about from a branding perspective is how they do everything in the market and what this brand stands for. So, in addition to the actual champagne that you can purchase, Verve also does merchandise and a range of collaborative experiences with hotels and hospitality brands around the world. Now, you can see up the top here, we have a picnic hamper kit, we have a Verve bicycle, and, Verve beach chairs. Now, just a heads up, any guesses, feel free to pop in the chat what a Verve bicycle retails for, which fairly well looks very similar to some of the bikes you can buy at Kmart, but it just literally has a tiny little brand stamped on there. I can't see the chat when I'm in this screen mode, but feel free to go ahead and give a guess at what these bicycles retail for. Limited
We've
edition.
had $2,000 come in as a guess from Kenny
Getting
Ann.
getting close, getting close.
We
So
north or
north. So just under $4,000 for one bike here.
is
Okay.
it
If
carbon
you know
fiber?
anything
I know.
about bikes, I'm a huge bike fan. You'll know that that's not a bike worth $4,000, but that's what the brand symbolizes. Notice the color scheme and the ethos across all of these pictures here. This is a collaboration in the Whit Sundays that Verve does. So they do hospitality collaborations. They're called day away picnics, and they retail from $500 to $5,000 for a unique experience. They run them for a limited edition for a month, and they sell out really quickly. There's a waiting list. Now, okay, we're thinking this is a premium brand. What has this got to do with our firm? Okay, so the thing about brands is they symbolize a representation, an external representation of the internal service and standards that you set, right? When you purchase an experience like this through Verve, you, without even needing to read the description, are going to have an assumption around the level of care and experience that's going to be set, right? The brand does the talking for you. This is what the brand currency is. It's like if you think about a premium car, so BMW, for example, or any luxury European car. If they release anything, there are certain standards that you expect and assume, right? The logo and some of the colors associated with that are simply the visual identity of that trust signal. The trust isn't built through the brand, the trust is built through the service and the product. But the branding becomes that instant recognizer, that instant identifier of everything that that brand stands for. It also then positions your pricing and your standards, right? So if you think about Ferrari versus Ford, they're both very strong brands in the market and they both have sports cars under their umbrellas and they both have well, sort of suburban assault 4x4s,
Mm.
but very different, right? So, a strong brand is also one of the keys to client community and cultivating strong referrals across your client base and your strategic partner base. Okay, they know that when they send someone to your brand, they can trust the level of support and care that they will receive. In an online environment, so doing business online, your clients making decisions about what services to say yes to in addition to what they do currently, or how easy it is to complete a transaction, your brand and the process, particularly through, for example, Fuse Docs, reduces decision friction. So anytime there is friction or confusion, conversions decrease. Actions decrease. This is when you get incomplete actions from your clients. Even if they do want to do business with you, that process of end to end must be seamless. And brand
Yeah.
currency gives you weighted authority. So when you say something from your brand or a representative from your brand says something, the authority given to that perspective or that statement is far greater, the weighting, than from outside that brand environment. And I think this is one of the big distinctions moving forward. And I'm going to share a few specific examples around that and what that means in today's online environment where there's an erosion of trust, online overwhelm, a new fraud in your inbox every
Mm.
day, right? So these things
Yeah.
become increasingly important.
Yeah. And Mon, just on that, like one thing I find interesting with the premium brands is there's also, as you said, that kind of that pricing expectation. So, like for instance, you wouldn't ever expect to go to Dan Murphy's and see Verve buy one get one. Okay, like if you saw that, that would just be so out of sync
It would
because
be a
it's a
happy
premium
day.
brand. It would
It would
be,
be a
but that
happy
day's
day,
not
but it
coming.
would you would never
But
expect it and it
and
never happens.
yeah, because they've got that pricing expectation. They don't do that. Similar to how you mentioned Ferrari as well. They're not doing an end of financial year special on Ferraris because they've got that built in. And I just find that interesting because it's kind of like the idea of a Ferrari on an EOFI special. Like that's just not how they position themselves, how they market. And it's just that branding ties into the pricing as well and that premium expectation.
That's right, because premium brands don't need to discount. So, a lot
Mm.
of brands I work with still use end of financial year as a mechanism because there's natural urgency and a deadline. And most people, unless it's a Ferrari on their vision board, won't take action unless there's a deadline or a reason to take action. So, you don't need to discount price, but you can use other mechanisms or bundle in some extra value. These are what premium brands do. So you're spot on there. So let's think about in a professional setting, absorbing information and these trust signals. Let's look at the brands on the left. These are, information-based brands. Let's look at the brands on the right. Okay, you may be familiar with most of them, but we have an impression around the trustworthiness and the weighted authority of these sources based off that brand and that logo, which is based off years of work and setting the standard for that brand, right? So the brand just tells that story that's already been created through the real work. The reason why it's important is our processing ability as humans is far faster than we can consciously even understand. This is unconscious imprints here, right? Um, because visual interpretation is much faster than, for example, storytelling, reading a whole long paragraph of information. We form judgments in not just seconds, milliseconds. In fact, a study from Carleton University in America and has since been published across many findings is we make an aesthetic judgment of something in 50 milliseconds. It's a
Yeah, wow.
snapshot. Doesn't mean we understand everything about it, but we have made a judgment. And I'm going to show you some
Mm.
examples of how you can be inadvertently creating a bad judgment in a moment. And then when it comes to actually processing information and attention spans for making decisions, over the course of the last 20 years, these have gone down rapidly. The data is just starting to come out now. So we talked about 12 seconds 20 years ago when we were in marketing. All those days are long gone. Even when we looked as far as back as, just 2 to 3 years ago compared to now, new data is coming out, so I don't have the exact stats, but I can tell you it's a lot less than 9 seconds, right? That we're in the TikTok era now of information
Mm.
processing. So all this means from a brand environment is that how you convey and visually represent your firm in the market means a lot, and it's either working for you or against you. Let's look at this example here on the left. This is a social media news feed, and I'm sharing this with permission because it's actually a firm that we've worked with. Social media news feed just a couple of years ago on the left. So there's a lot of AI tools and great things now that can make all of this marketing a lot faster and easier than it used to be. That doesn't mean, though, you should be doing it without some consideration, right? Because on the left, you're immediately creating a snapshot perception what? That this is not cohesive, not planned
Mm.
out, not aligned with any particular brand. So it doesn't mean anything and looks very slapstick. And you think to yourself, well, if that's the approach in that format online, perhaps that's also the approach in the other way we do things in the firm, right? It certainly doesn't align with knocking on the door, expecting a premium experience or to be paying above average or above market rate for an experience at that firm, right? This is the same firm on the right-hand side, just literally 6 months later. So everything consistent, all the same brand color and branding across internal communications for client documents, value added resources and PDFs out in the market, their social media presence, everything. Now, this firm has completely elevated their fees and their position as part and parcel of what they've been doing here. Obviously, they've done other things as well, but it's also transformed the internal perception of the people working at the firm and who they are in the market. It's really, really cool because sometimes we think that marketing is just about what we're showcasing to the world out there. But half of marketing is internal marketing. It's just how you represent yourself to your own client base. For most firms, that's where the biggest growth opportunities and fee uplift is. It's also how you are represented and that buy-in you have for your team who are proud to be part of this. This is particularly important if your firm is looking to attract new candidates and talent to work in your firm. We all know it's like a complete talent crisis, which means your firm is actually competing against other firms for talent. And how you represent yourself online, particularly for the younger generation of workers, is very important. They are also making that snap judgment, right? All right. Now, I mentioned before about fraud and the erosion of online trust. And, we've almost reached crisis levels now of the amount of scams and frauds going on, lack of trust by consumers, also now lack of trust, we could probably say, with some recent events with government and authority figures, right? But uh, on the flip side, that actually works to your advantage. If you are still in that trusted advisor position and your firm's brand does have trust with clients. However, it's important that it's visually represented because I can tell you that over the last sort of 30 days, or 40 days. So, with a lot of firms finalising documents by 15 May, I've had a couple of firms and clients of mine say that their own clients have been calling their office asking them if some of the actual emails they have sent out are scams or is it
Mm.
actually from their firm? Because it kind of looks hodgepodged together with systems, doesn't look cohesive. And their clients, understandably so, were actually asking genuinely because the firm had had new team members starting, so they weren't familiar with the team members. And the firm's branding across all of that didn't look consistent or coherent. Now, John, I will
Yeah.
say those weren't Fuse Doc clients, so
I
I'm
hope
in
not. I
conversation
hope
with
not.
them to get on the good train here. But
Yeah.
this is real. This is happening, and I think that the importance of this over the coming years is only going to increase, and it's something that you know is going to make a difference in terms of time saving in your firm,
Mm.
but fee uplift and making things easy. And I'm sure you guys have seen that as well, no doubt, at your end.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Like we've seen that. And it's so important, like having that brand consistency, as you said, because, and we talk about this all the time with firms before they come on board with Fuse Docs and Fuse Sign, because they might be using like four different apps to collect
Yes,
signatures from their clients. Because, oh, we use this for this system, this for that system, this for this one. It's like, well, why? Like, how is the client experience around that? Because as you said, like, clients, people's not just clients, everyone's. Our attention span is less than a goldfish. That's something I learned today. But then it's about them making it easy and consistent for them. So they know, like, okay, when I receive this from ABC Accountants, I know that it's going to come from FuseSign, it's going to be these colors, it's going to be this, and it's going to be that consistency. Because yeah, like you said, there's so much noise out there. I guess it's about like making them familiar with you. And I think people, because there is that noise, people are just seeking that familiarity rather than working with brands who they don't know and don't trust.
absolutely. Because there's only so many decisions everyone makes on a daily
Mm.
basis. And if we remove that decision fatigue because they trust the process with your firm, not just makes it easier for them to tick off all the processes needed for you to complete everything from the client perspective, but also for them to say yes to the other opportunities you're putting in front of them to better service them. Right. And, there's so much talk about AI in the industry. I'm sure that's the last thing we all feel like listening to right now. That's just everywhere. But, the reality is that over the coming years, some of the value of the actual behind the scenes processes and tasks and information starts decreasing. John, you already mentioned that there are other providers now entering the space. However, all that means is that the actual value of what you provide in terms of assurance, credibility, and that trusted process, the value of that increases, right? And it's very easy to see and feel what that looks like when you're sitting person to person with your client. But it's about taking that feeling of brand trust then across the entirety of what you do and your client experience in the firm. Because that's where the magic is, that's where the value is. And if you think about it, that's why clients will continue to pay regardless of even if they can do a few things through AI, is because of that brand currency they have with you. So it's about elevating that and understanding that that is where all future value lies. And so then the
Mm.
question is, how do you make sure you're building that brand currency for your firm? Right? So obviously it's important to have a strong brand identity. And when I say a strong brand identity, I don't mean you don't have to do a 30 to $50,000 brand exercise with a really big agency, right? That's not what I'm talking about at all. I'm just talking about a strong brand identity in terms of colors, a few design elements, key messages or image styles for your firm, so that if you put your hand over the logo on your website or on your documents that are going out, if you put the logo over, because most firms' name are such and such last name and such last name, or a three-letter acronym, right? We're all guilty of that. If you put your hand over that, could your client easily recognize which document, if they had 10 in front of them, was from your firm, right? That's what we mean by a strong brand identity. How you do that is through being extremely consistent. So, consistency across every form of communication, whether that be digital or in an offline environment. And not just consistency across everything, but then consistency over time. So it's like a twofold scenario. And then being strategically visible. So making things a little bit bolder or a little bit more part of the process that you do. Because really, your brand currency is just about making the value inside your firm that you provide to clients more visible, right? Because
Mm.
if we go back to thinking about attention spans are like goldfish, we're doom scrolling and seeing, 100, 1,000, million different messages every hour. We've already forgotten about your previous message. So we need to be consistently visible and top of mind. Okay, so these are things that I think are really important. And the cool thing for firms is you have real credibility in terms of your profession and how you help clients already. And it's just making sure that the icing on the cake really represents that. Otherwise, people don't continue to invest at that level. Now, you've already got this amazing fuse doc system. I got the example here of O'Connell's who have just done a very, very cool rebrand. Go check out their website if you want to see a surprise of awesome branding in action. But in a nutshell, you've already got all of these documents coming out. Obviously, Paul can speak to that in great depth, but we've been collaborating around what actual branding you need to seamlessly align with that process. And as John mentioned, it's a very busy time of the year coming up for new documents, new opportunities, end of financial year, but if you think of all of the changes through the budget, potential restructuring work that needs to be done, communications, payday super changeovers, AML, this is the time to do a review and up level and make sure that your internal marketing is just as good as anything that a new client sees. So let's think back to Verve or Ferrari versus Ford, and just think about how you want your firm positioned in the market. Here are just some easy examples of how what is essentially a cover document on something could look radically different depending on what branding your firm currently has. Now, some of you are saying our firm doesn't have much branding. We've just got our website. That's totally fine. Like I said, it's very easy to craft a strong brand identity with some colors and elements that just can be pulled from or feed from what you already have, or to create something that is new but aligns with some of the legacy pieces you have. It doesn't need to be an expensive or difficult exercise. If you think about, inside your FuseDocs environment, you'll have a cover page, content page, internal document pages, separating pages, back pages, also for your offline environment as well. You want your social media or, blog pictures on your website. I've got some examples of how social media would align with covers here to all have a similar brand identity. This is where people can go, oh, cool, that's this firm. This is this
Yeah.
firm. And we trust and we can see that information. All
Yeah.
right.
And Monique, if I could just jump in there, because I
Yes.
think, like, speaking from experience, I think having these, like, I almost call them like guardrails, having them there just makes it so much easier. Because I think that, like I said, I'm in marketing, but I'm not a design guy. Like the team, they'll be laughing hearing this because, like, I've been banned from Canva. I don't have a design bone in my body. But having these templates enables me to, work with the team. So it's like, okay, like, here's how our branding, here's how it should be. And then it's easier for me to work from there. Because I think that part of the struggle with people like myself who aren't great at design is you're not sure where to start. So having this put together is almost like a shortcut. It's like a hack where you've got that, you know how it should be, and then you can go from there. And then it makes it easier from that point onwards.
100%. And look, if you have invested 30 to 50 grand on an expensive branding exercise, you'll have a full style guide, which will
Mm,
be that Bible for everything you do. But 90 let's say 95, 98% of firms I speak with don't have that and don't need that, but they can start with just a series of templates like this that form the basis then for what they do. It's a huge time saver in every way
Mm,
across what you do and enables people in your firm to work on documents or to create things or even brief third parties or contractors simply, easily, and get the same result every time. So you absolutely nailed it. Um,
mm.
John. So I guess what I wanted to share was if your firm is thinking about up leveling your branding, either you don't have much of a brand and you just want a great identity that you can have across your Fuse Docs ecosystem, or you've got some great branding happening, but it's just sitting isolated in one area and then not being deployed or used consistently across the rest of what you do. We have put together a special end of financial year offer for you. It's not a discount. But it is a very cost-effective way to make some magic happen before end of financial year for your firm. So, because as John mentioned, I collaborate really closely with the Fuse team, and I've also, spent some time with Paul looking at what is it just that you actually need in terms of the specifications inside the system, so that it all works perfectly and easily. We've crafted a pack for you where we will redo or rebrand your Fuse Docs suite plus a set of social media templates and like a Word document template for you in a really fast pre-end of financial year turnaround that will integrate seamlessly. Paul's team will love it because you're getting the right things
Yeah.
all uploaded. No, convoluted process of, what's your brand animal that takes 5 months to go through. For this case, it's just about up leveling that identity and that visuals. So we can do that for you. We've put together a really cool and easy package just for Fuse clients, so it's not available elsewhere. And an easy next step is to just book in for a brand call with me. I can walk you through those options and also share with you a bunch of examples from other firms so you can see what's possible, what it looks like, and walk through, price and turnaround time, which is nice and easy. So, like I said, two options. Maybe you've already got some great branding, but it just hasn't been rolled out across everything. We can help you do that, or you want something that can be created quickly to up level the look of your firm. So I'd be excited to help more firms just smash this before, all this next round of documents because it is important and it will help the positioning of your firm with your goals.